Hello. It's cold and raining today. Welcome to part 2 of Gettier's Gettier lecture on Gettier's famous paper. What's it called? Is knowledge true justified belief? Took me a minute. Okay, it's very cold and rainy out right now. But I'm on my walk and it's not too bad. So, let's see. Walking in the park. No one's here. Very empty. Okay, so last time, just a quick recap, we covered the question of what would it mean to give a conceptual analysis of knowledge in terms of necessary sufficient conditions. And I gave a characterization. I tried to spend a lot of time talking about the traditional analysis of knowledge as true justified belief. And the way that it's framed in the Gettier paper is to say, S knows that P is true if and only if P is true. S believes that P, and S is justified in believing that P. And then we talked a little bit about what it would mean to give a counterexample to that analysis. And I tried to say, there are two different ways to give a counterexample. One of them is to the idea that one of the conditions is necessary, and the other version of a counterexample would be one that shows that the satisfying all the conditions is not sufficient to have knowledge. So Gettier's counterexamples are counterexamples to the sufficiency claim, to the idea that if you have a true justified belief, that guarantees that you know. So he gives two counterexamples in his paper, and both of them are cases in which somebody has a true justified belief, but they don't know that P. And one of the things that's kind of weird about the paper, if you're not used to reading philosophy papers of this style, is that the examples are kind of strange. The thought experiments that he gives to sort of show a case in which S believes that P is true, and S is justified in believing P, but S doesn't know that P. It kind of goes to some great lengths to construct these cases, and they're not so natural. But I'll also give some examples I had given in the slide of more naturalistic sort of scenarios. So the first scenario that he imagines has to do with this guy who's going for a job interview, and there's some other person there who's also there for the job interview. And let's imagine that they're sitting in the office lobby or whatever. They're hanging out together before the interview, and the guy sees that. Okay, let's do this case where we say it's you. You're there for a job interview. You are somewhere for a job interview, and there's someone else there, some guy who's there next to you. You see them counting out. They've got a bunch of coins in their pockets, and they count it out, and they have 12 or whatever, 10. I think there's 10 coins in their pocket. And you, for whatever reason, remark on this. You think, oh, that person's got 10 coins in their pocket. Then you go in, you have your interview, they have their interview, and afterward, the employer seems to not have thought much of you, but they're saying things like, "Congratulations, you did a great job," to the other person that was there for the interview. So on the basis of this behavior, you form the belief that the person with 10 coins in their pockets is going to get the job. And now, unbeknownst to you, they actually didn't do so well. The boss was just being nice to them, but really they're going to hire you. And also unbeknownst to you, you have 10 coins in your pocket. So you form the belief that the person that is going to get the job has 10 coins in their pocket. It's true because you have 10 coins in your pocket, but you don't know that you do. You believe it, and you're justified in believing it because you're justified in believing that person's going to get the job because the boss was pretty explicit with them. Made it really sound like they were going to get it. and you knew that they had 10 coins in their pocket, so it seems you're justified in believing that that person had 10 coins in their pocket and that they're going to get the job. So you're justified in believing that the person with 10 coins in their pocket is going to get the job. Okay, so unpacking this for a second. Why is this a counterexample? The idea is that you don't know that P, you're the S, and P is the proposition that the person with 10 coins in their pocket is going to get the job. So you don't know that, but nevertheless you have a true justified belief that the person with 10 coins in their pocket is going to get the job. That's how the counterexample is set up. You satisfy all the conditions that are part of the JTB account, J, justified true belief account of knowledge. And if that was a sufficient condition, then you should also know. But it seems that here's a case in which you don't know, even though you satisfy all three conditions, thus proving that the conditions are not actually jointly sufficient. It's so freezing cold out here. My hands are so cold. I'm glad this is a very short paper. I'll get done with this lecture very quickly and get home. Okay, so that's the first example. In the paper, it's Smith and Jones. Smith is the person who formulates the he has the true justified belief, but no knowledge. I turned it into making it about you, but in the second case, it's also about Smith and Jones. Another weird example, but in this case, Smith is at his office, and he has this coworker named Jones, and every day Jones drives a Ford to work. So Smith formulates the belief that Jones owns a Ford, because it's pretty reasonable to think that. I mean, if you see your coworker drive to work every day in a Ford, it's at least plausible to think that's good evidence that he owns the Ford. Now, Smith is a sort of weird logician. He realizes that he can sort of make an inference from the fact that Jones owns a Ford. All right, this is a little bit of beyond what we've covered so far, but we need a little piece of logic to explain this case. It's just the meaning of the word "or" in logic. So let me tell you about this for a second. Okay, so "or," the word "or," sometimes called logical "or," is a sentential connective with a certain kind of semantics. What that means is it's a connective. It connects two different sentences together. So you can have P or Q is a sentence formed using the word "or." And when I say it has a semantics, that what I mean is that there's a way of calculating its truth value. It's a truth functional operator. Its truth value is determined by the truth values of the sentences that it connects. So simply put, like if I say, I'm going to go to the store or I'm going to go to the gym. I'm not doing either of those today, but so it's false. But it would be true under the circumstance where I was going to go to the gym. And it would be true under the circumstance where I was going to go to the store. So it's enough that one of them be true for the whole sentence to be true. So I could basically, if I knew I was going to go to the store, I could tell you something true by saying, I'm going to go to the store or I'm going to go to the gym. Even though I know that I'm not going to go to the gym. The sentence is true just in case one of the two disjuncts, they call them, are true. So if you say P or Q, that sentence is true just in case P is true or Q is true. Okay, so that's all the little bit of logic we need in order to understand the second Gettier case. So the second Gettier case starts off, as I was just saying, with Smith sees Jones driving a Ford to work, and he's a weird logician, so he just decides to formulate a new proposition. Either Jones owns a Ford or my friend Brown is in Barcelona. He just chose out of a hat that Brown's in Barcelona. I think actually in the original example he formulates 3 or 4 different sentences Brown's in Barcelona, or Brown's in X, or Brown's in Y, Brown's in Boston. He just forms a bunch of beliefs. Now the idea is that if he's justified in believing that Jones owns a Ford, he's also justified in believing that Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona, because that sentence is true anytime that P is true. So P or Q is true anytime that P is true. So if you're justified in believing P, you're justified in believing P or Q for any sentence Q. You don't have to have any evidence for it. So he could have said either Jones owns a Ford or the moon is made of green cheese. And he still would have been justified in believing that, because he's justified in believing the first part of it. Okay, so he weirdly decides to formulate this belief, and he starts thinking to himself, I definitely think it's true that either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona. But he has no idea where Brown is. Brown, let's say, is like a coworker. He's gone on vacation, but Smith, he didn't tell Smith where he was going, so Smith is just wildly guessing. But because he knows a little bit of logic, he's convinced that he's justified and that this is a true sentence. Now, unbeknownst to Smith, Jones is only renting that car. He doesn't own a Ford. He doesn't own any car. So that part of the belief is false. But also unbeknownst to Smith, Brown is in Barcelona. He just happened to pick something that was true. So the sentence, Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona, is true. And he's justified in believing it because, well, he was justified in believing that Jones owned a Ford. So he has a justified true belief. But again, this is not he doesn't know. So the idea is that it's intuitively false to say that Smith knows that Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona, because he's wrong about the part that he's justified in believing, and he has no information about where Brown is. So how could he know that sentence is true? So he doesn't know it. Nevertheless, he checks all the boxes of the traditional analysis. He's got a true justified belief. Okay. So like I said, these cases are pretty weird. They serve the purpose of proving that there are counterexamples to the traditional analysis, to the JTB theory of knowledge. In the slides, I give a couple extra ones. I'm just going to go over one of them. This one's actually from Bertrand Russell. He didn't think of it as a counterexample to the traditional conception of knowledge, the traditional analysis, but it is one. It is a counterexample. So, so Russell imagines a clock, and imagine seeing the clock and say it says, 3:15. And so you formulate the belief, oh, it's 3:15. I looked at a clock. That's how I usually tell what time it is. So I'm justified in believing that it's 3:15. And it is 3:15. So you have a true belief, true justified belief. But in Russell's case, the clock is broken. It says 3:15 all day, every day. You just happened to get lucky and look at it at the time when it actually was 3:15. So you formulated by a true belief, but it was totally by accident, freak accident. And if you had looked at it any other minute, you would have gotten the wrong answer. You just happened to get lucky and get it right that time. So the idea of this case is, it was blind luck. Sorry, I shouldn't say blind luck. Ableism. It was just pure luck that you saw the clock at the exact right moment. So the intuition is supposed to be, in this case, you don't know what time it is, even though you were lucky enough to form a true belief. And the idea is it's a justified belief, since looking at a clock is the sort of thing that gives you justification for knowing what time it is. So those are Gettier's two famous counterexamples to the traditional JTB account of knowledge. At this point, hopefully you understand, what a conceptual analysis is supposed to do, what it's supposed to be, and what it means to give a counterexample. You should be able to understand why this is a counterexample to the sufficiency of the condition, not the necessity of any of the conditions. So he's not showing that truth is not necessary for knowledge. He's not showing that justification is not necessary for knowledge. He's not showing that belief is not necessary for knowledge. All that stuff is still intact. All he's shown is that those three things don't amount to knowledge. Like, you can satisfy those three conditions without also having knowledge, so they're not sufficient. So this paper, which came out in 1963, spawned a gigantic literature that went for at least about 37 years to 45, 50, maybe continues now. But the heyday of this problem was in the latter half of the 20th century. And basically it involved people, philosophers, epistemologists, trying to find a fourth condition on knowledge, or maybe more, something to add to JTB in order to rule out the Gettier cases. So the idea was like, Gettier cases are these cases in which you have a true justified belief, but you don't know. S has a true justified belief, but S doesn't know that P. And the idea would be to add a condition that they don't satisfy, that S doesn't satisfy, or P doesn't satisfy, or the belief doesn't satisfy, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of different attempts that were made to try to add something to the account so that all and only cases of knowledge would be satisfied by those four conditions. Would satisfy those four conditions. So, but strangely, a complete account was never discovered. Not to this day, no one has found a fourth condition that works. Every time, I mean, many conditions have been attempted, but people can always been able to construct further Gettier cases, cases where the JTB plus the fourth condition are all satisfied, but where the person doesn't know. So that was a major effort. That was like one of the main things that epistemologists were trying to do for years and years, is come up with, like, fix the analysis of knowledge, get the right conceptual analysis of knowledge. After, I said it lasted for about 37 years, around the turn of the century and into the 21st century, people started to give up on the project of trying to do a conceptual analysis of knowledge. They started to say, it seems like we can't do this for some reason. We can't give necessary and sufficient conditions for knowledge. And that's okay. We don't need a conceptual analysis to keep going, to do epistemology. That is more or less where we're at now. I mean, some people are still trying to solve the puzzle, but it's not the main focus of epistemology right now. So, okay, thank you for listening. That's where, I'm teaching this article partly because it's just a famous and influential article, but I also wanted to get us thinking about truth, justification, and belief in order to go on to talk about this really sophisticated, difficult paper that's going to be the last one of this unit. Jim Pryor's paper, The Skeptic and the Dogmatist. So I'm going to do 4 videos on that paper. So, okay, bye.